Underneath one of the driest stretches of desert on Earth, there is a city that should not be able to survive on its own water. Dubai sits on land with almost no rivers, no lakes, and barely any rainfall. For most of human history, no major city could have existed here. And yet today, more than 3 million people drink water every day that did not exist in liquid form a few hours earlier. It was pulled from the sea. To make that possible, engineers built something most visitors never notice. Hidden beneath highways, sand dunes, and entire neighborhoods, a network of pipelines moves billions of liters of desalinated water from the coast into the heart of the desert. The system works around the clock, every single day of the year. But turning seawater into a city's lifeline is not simple. It requires enormous amounts of energy, careful engineering, and a process that creates problems of its own. Once the water is gone, somewhere along this hidden network, something has to give. To understand how, we have to start at the place where it all begins. Not in the city, in the sea. The Arabian Gulf looks calm from the shore, but beneath the surface, it is one of the saltiest bodies of water on the planet. Shallow, warm, and nearly enclosed, the Gulf barely exchanges water with the open ocean. Salt builds up, heat builds up. There is almost nowhere for it to escape. This is the water Dubai depends on. At Jebel Ali, on the city's southwestern coast, intake pipes reach out into the Gulf and begin pulling in millions of liters of seawater every hour. It looks like a simple process. Pull water in, strip out the salt, send it forward. It is not simple. Engineers have to fight against corrosion, marine growth, and water dense enough to damage equipment built for ordinary seas. Every machine here was designed around one brutal fact. This is some of the harshest water on Earth to desalinate, and the city above ground has no idea how close this operation runs to its limits. Workers describe it differently. They call Jebel Ali the heart. If the heart stops, even for a few hours, the consequences move fast, faster than most people in Dubai would expect. To turn that seawater into something drinkable, Jebel Ali uses two very different methods. The older one boils seawater using heat from the power plant next door. The newer one forces seawater through membranes so fine that salt simply cannot pass through. Both work, but both come with a cost nobody sees on a water bill. Desalination takes enormous energy, far more than pumping water from a river or a lake. Every liter that reaches a tap in Dubai represents gas burned, turbines spinning, and heat generated specifically to make that water exist. Engineers at the plant know this trade-off intimately. One described it simply: the city is not just thirsty, it is thirsty for energy first, and water second. Then comes the part most people never think about. For every liter of clean water produced, the plant is left with a leftover stream of water far saltier than the sea itself. That brine has to go somewhere. It gets pumped back into the Gulf. At first, this seemed harmless. The ocean is vast. Surely it could absorb anything. But the Gulf is not the open ocean. It is shallow. It is enclosed. And for years, almost no one outside the industry was tracking what was building up beneath the surface. Researchers studying the Gulf began noticing something strange. Salt levels near the coast were rising, slowly but consistently. Decades of brine discharge had been adding up, year after year, plant after plant. The Gulf was already naturally salty. Now it was becoming saltier than it had ever been in recorded history. For marine life, that shift mattered more than most people realized. Coral reefs near the discharge zone started showing stress. Fish populations in some areas began to shift away from the warmest, saltiest stretches of water. One researcher put it bluntly: the Gulf was beginning to fight back against the very system built to drink from it. Here was the twist nobody at the plant had planned for. The more desalinated water Dubai produced to keep growing, the more concentrated the leftover brine became. And the more concentrated the brine became, the harder future desalination would be. The sea that fed the city was slowly turning against the process itself. Engineers needed a way to keep producing more water without pushing the Gulf past a point it could recover from. What they tried next would change how the entire system worked, but it would also expose a risk no one had fully prepared for. The answer came in the form of a new technology: reverse osmosis. Instead of boiling seawater, this method pushes it through membranes under intense pressure. It uses far less energy than the old thermal plants. For DUA, This looked like the breakthrough the system needed. New reverse osmosis units rose along the Jebel Ali coastline, quietly, plant by plant. They began taking on more of the city's water demand. But shifting an entire city's water supply is never just a technical decision. The pipelines that carried water inland had been built for one kind of system. Now they had to handle output from two different processes, blending at different pressures, different temperatures, different chemistries. One engineer recalled the tension during early testing. Even a small imbalance in pressure could damage kilometers of buried pipeline, the same pipeline running directly beneath highways and residential blocks. Then came a deeper problem. Dubai still needed power, and power still needed gas. Most of that gas did not come from inside the UAE. It arrived through an undersea pipeline, stretching across international waters, controlled by infrastructure outside Dubai's own hands. The city's water security suddenly depended on a fuel source it could not fully control. And somewhere in that dependency, a single disruption could ripple through everything. This is the final section, so I'll close out the story properly, resolving the tension, landing on the broader meaning, and ending with the natural, restrained subscribe line for the original instructions. Dua's answer was not just more pipelines, it was redundancy. Solar power began feeding directly into newer reverse osmosis plants, cutting dependence on gas for at least part of the system. Underground, engineers built something almost invisible to the public. Vast storage basins designed to hold desalinated water in reserve, buried beneath the desert itself. The idea was simple. If the surface system ever failed, even for days, the city would not feel it immediately. Water pumped in during stable periods would sit waiting underground, ready to be pulled back into the network the moment it was needed. It was not a cure for the Gulf's rising salinity or the pressure on aging pipelines, but it was a buffer against the system's most dangerous weakness, how little room for error a desert city actually has. Today, that hidden network keeps expanding. More reverse osmosis units, more solar integration, more buried reserves beneath the sand. Dubai did not solve the problem of building a city without water. It engineered around it piece by piece, often just ahead of its own growth. The pipelines beneath your feet, if you ever walk through Dubai, are not just carrying water. They are carrying the margin between a city that thrives and one that runs dry. If stories like this interest you, consider subscribing for more.